the other day, we came super close to winning a new client in our agency. And I'm going to tell you the story about this in just a minute. In the end, we actually turned this brand down because of one specific demand that they made. I say demand, it was, something they wanted as a requirement. They weren't being rude about it or anything like that. So this was an Aussie brand. They have been around for a while. They've been very successful selling via wholesale. They've got a huge roster of wholesale stockists, and they also do a lot of markets and shows and things like that. But so far, they've never been successful at selling online via an e-commerce website, and that was their next goal. And in fact, they are only just in the process right now of designing their first proper e-commerce website. And so they're yet to even start things like running ads or building an email list or doing any of that kind of, direct to consumer online marketing stuff. So, during our discussions, we had put together a really comprehensive strategy for them to build their brand online, build their audience, and grow their e-commerce sales. But the one thing that they wanted and that we wouldn't do was to promise them a specific return on ad spend, or ROAS. And mostly that's because they had absolutely no historic conversion data at all, because they were so new, or they were yet to start e-commerce and that, start the whole online marketing and advertising shebang. So, I feel like it should go without saying that the first thing that you need to do is test some marketing and get some data before you can assess what works and what not, and what doesn't work, and be able to make some predictions about what is possible in the future. Ultimately, without data, it really is just guesswork. And I'm not in the business of guessing whether, somebody might get a specific ROAS. But anyway, there was one other really important reason why I don't want to promise a specific ROAS, return on ad spend. Especially if it's, somebody wanting and demanding a really high or above average ROAS for their industry. And and I'm not saying that because I don't absolutely celebrate anytime we or our clients enjoy a really fantastic ROAS on their ads. Of course, that's a lot of fun and we all enjoy and celebrate that. However, there's a really critically important reason why you should never aim for a specific high ROAS, and why I don't actually pursue that for myself and my own businesses. And that might sound a little bit weird for you, given how much I do talk about the importance of being profitable in your business and being able to profitably, scale and grow using paid traffic. But, the issue is this: what is the key metric or the key performance indicator that you are actually optimizing for? And, are you optimizing for ROAS, or are you optimizing for profitable revenue growth? Because they don't actually necessarily mean the same thing. And I think a lot of people think that they just assume that they do. You might think that a high ROAS by definition equals a profitable revenue, but that's not necessarily the case. In actual fact, it can be false. So let's dive into this. Would you like me to explain how this is, and tell you what you really should be optimizing for instead? So that's what we are going to dive into in today's episode. But before we dive in, I want to remind you about my amazing new resource that I've created. If you haven't got a copy of it yet, my free 5-step training on how to design your e-commerce traffic and sales strategy. So if you're not making the sales that you want right now, and you know that you need a new or better strategy than you have right now, then, you definitely want to grab this resource. So over 5 lessons, basically, I'm teaching you how to design a traffic and sales strategy for your e-commerce business that will actually see you achieving your goals for once. So if you want to grab a copy of that, all you need to do is head to katherinelangman.com/get-more-sales, and you can get instant access to that today. We will, of course, include the link to that on today's podcast show notes page as well. So let's dive into today's episode. What are we optimizing for? And I wanted to start with a funny little anecdote, a little bit of a story. I remember this one time years and years ago when my son Hamish was just 1 year old, and he was starting out with swimming lessons. And he really, really did not want to get in the water in the lesson pool. Not because he didn't like the water, he's always loved the water, but he just didn't feel like stopping whatever else he was doing. He was probably playing in the splash pool to do what I wanted him to do in that moment, which was his lesson. And I'm sure I'm not the only parent who has stubborn kids who don't want to do what mum says, right? So anyway, I did what all smart parents do and I bribed him. I promised him one of those, those really big smiley face cookies. I don't know if they're still a thing anymore, but they were the popular sweet treat at the cafe, at the pool, and they were in cafes everywhere. I promised him one of these smiley face cookies if he did his lesson. And they're the ones that have smarties for eyes and nose and a big lolly snake for the smiley mouth. Anyway, so he's only 1 year old. He'd been talking for some time already though. And so when I offered the biscuit bribe, he thought about it for a minute and then he turned to me and he said, 2 biscuits. And then he promptly got in the water and did his lesson. And when I offered Hamish this bribe, I, most definitely took the risk that he would be demanding 2 biscuits every time he went to swimming lessons. I certainly wasn't going to pay that price each time. I mean, these biscuits were almost the size of his face. But thankfully, he loved his lessons so much that he didn't ask for them again after that. And the irony, of course, is this kid is now a national swimmer who competes at the Australian Championships. So I suppose that means that the lifetime value of those 2 biscuits paid off. So what's the analogy for business? And here it is. It's how much does it cost you to win a new customer in your business? Have you ever stopped to work that out, to calculate it? And by the costs to acquire a customer, I'm talking about 2 things: how much you spend on ads and how much margin you give up in discounts or incentives in order to win the first order from a new customer. Whether you do or don't know the answer to this question, do you have any idea how much it should cost you, or rather maybe how much you can afford to pay? And what about this next question? How can you manage to pay more than your competitors? I mean, if you think about it, all businesses have competition for your customers' dollars. You may have a really unique product with some very distinct and valuable points of difference compared to your competitors in whatever product category or industry that you are in. But your customers are very likely to already be using some kind of a solution to their problem or their need, even if that solution isn't as unique or effective as yours. So ultimately, we all have a finite pool of customers. Sure, some markets are bigger than others, but not limitless, right? And so to thrive in business, we all need to win more new customers than our competitors, which will only be achieved by having better marketing and advertising in order to make your potential customers aware that you exist first, and then, of course, encourage them to take the plunge and buy from you. But sadly, your potential customers are never going to buy from you simply because your product is different and better than your competitor's product. I mean, if that was the approach that you take, I can pretty much guarantee you will remain the world's best kept secret. So you need great marketing and advertising to get noticed and convert sales, right? And that is going to cost you money. So how much can you afford to pay? Is that a realistic amount in terms of, how much ads cost these days? And how can you manage to pay more than your competitors? So let's pick this apart a little bit. So first of all, let's take the question of how much you can afford to pay, both in ad spend and discounts, to acquire a new customer. So this is going to come down to a couple of things: your gross profit margins within your product pricing, and how much your customers spend with you, so your average order value. And I would say probably the majority of my clients don't particularly love spreadsheets and tracking data and things like that. But I do have and have had over the years clients who religiously track how much they spend on ads, how much they're making in revenue, and therefore what their return on ad spend, or ROAS, is. And I've even had some clients who go to the effort of deducting their cost of goods, so they're trying to work out their average gross profit margin from that equation. Most commonly, they're still failing to take into consideration the discounts that they're offering to win the first sale from a new customer, the ethical biscuit bribe, if you like. So their numbers are still a bit skewed and they're not, generally making as much money as they think they are. Or maybe they just don't, they're not kind of realizing that that's going on there. Uh, but, obviously, if we want to build a profitable business, we must make more than we spend on ads. So we definitely need to work hard to increase our conversion rate and increase that average order value. But something interesting can happen here as well. Sometimes certain offers or incentives are more enticing than others. You might be able to massively increase your conversion rate, for example, by changing the offer or the incentive that you run with. Or you might be able to massively increase your average order value with a certain offer or incentive. And sometimes you can even do both, which is pretty fun. But then do you take the time to figure out if that is a valuable customer? Do they come back? Are customers who take you up on one offer more valuable over the long term than another offer? Coming back to buy again, perhaps at full price. And I find this can often be really counterintuitive. Sometimes we think we're making more with a particular offer, maybe just because that's what the top line revenue looks like. Or we might think that we're making more because, we're managing to get customers to pay full price with no discount or incentive. But sometimes if you look deeper, some of these customers just buy once and they never come back. Whereas another offer might not be so lucrative necessarily on the first order, but they really hook customers in and, those customers then reliably become raving fans who, buy from you again and again. And of course, I know which kind of customers I want. Hopefully you are thinking the same thing as me. So figuring out those metrics, the cost of ads and incentives to convert a new customer, your conversion rate, your average order value, and then, diving into the lifetime value also of customers, that come in on different offers, it really makes it a much simpler equation to predict your future growth. And I want to share an example here. So one of our mastery clients, Shayna, her business is the Waste Free Home in New Zealand. So she's been working really hard to get these metrics dialed in. And a few weeks ago, she said to me that she really needed to increase her targets to fund a really big new product range that she's designing and manufacturing. And, if you've ever been in the kind of business where you're designing and manufacturing, I mean, there's hard deadlines for a production deposit followed by the balance payment for production and then often shipping and customs. And these big bills can feel really scary and intimidating if you've never had to fund them before or not of that size. But, because of how we've helped Shayna set up her marketing and advertising, and more importantly, the fact that she knows these critical metrics, it's become a relatively simple sum to calculate. So she could plug her new revenue goals into our proprietary planning and tracking tool. And that tool automatically calculated for her how much she needed to increase her ad budgets by in order to get the traffic and sales and make the money that she needs by her due dates. And consequently, she's now smashing through her original sales targets, which is an incredibly exciting thing to see. And she's on track to hit her new target. The problem is most entrepreneurs don't spend time tracking and analyzing their most important metrics. Most entrepreneurs think, metrics and data are boring, but they're actually really critical so that we don't end up becoming essentially victims to our own personal preferences. So many times people say to me, I hate marketing emails, so I don't want to do it in my business. And, so they're falling victim to their own personal preferences. And I think, it can be really exciting to believe enthusiastically in our ideas. And it's also easy to assume that everyone else has the same personal preferences. But without data to test if our marketing ideas are effective, we can quickly and easily end up implementing marketing that actually isn't working. And we would have absolutely no idea of that fact without the data to tell us. And so this also leads me to the second part of my original question, which was how can you pay more to acquire new customers compared to your competitors? I mean, this is presuming that you actually really want to, scale bigger and faster than those competitors and be more successful than those competitors, right? And the answer here is to be able to maximize how much each new customer spends with you within 60 to 90 days. So this is critically important because if your customers buy from you more than once in that time frame, they are, automatically going to be a lot more profitable for your business, right? And if you can keep optimizing your marketing to new customers so that they come back and spend more with you over and over again, particularly, in that kind of a short time frame, then you will be far more profitable than your competitors. Now, why the 60 to 90-day time frame? I mean, this is, this is like a rough guide. I mean, it's not going to be the same for every business, right? But of course and further to that, of course, you still want them to come back again after that period of time. I'm not saying that we only want people to buy within 90 days. Within Degaro Beauty, we have customers who've bought more than 20 times over the last few years, and those customers are really valuable to us. And we do our best, absolute best to take really good care of them. We love them. But 16 to 90 days is a short enough time frame to feasibly, fund more ad spend and manage your cash flow to acquire new customers before you really need to replenish the coffers further with those repeat orders, right? I typically call this phase the profit maximizer, and I try to optimize this largely using email automation rather than spending more on ads. And, aside from the fact that it's going to be a lot cheaper using email, a lot more profitable using email instead of ads here, but doing so also means that you'll be collecting more data, more metrics, and that's going to help you to predict the future 90-day value of your new customers as well. And I guess some people do spend more advertising money to their existing customers. And, I can completely understand why. These people are your warmest audience, right? They're your low-hanging fruit. They already know and like your stuff. And when you spend money on advertising to your existing customers, they typically convert very quickly and very easily, and, with a really high conversion rate, and they give you the most amazing ROAS, return on ad spend. But when you spend too much of your ad budget on this audience, on this existing customer base audience, two things happen that can ultimately lead to the detriment of your business long term. Firstly, the ad algorithm becomes conditioned to go for that low-hanging fruit, and it can become harder and harder to get your ads to, get the kind of reach and engagement with the cold new audiences, the prospecting audiences that you'll need to be attracting if you want to win new customers and grow your business. But secondly, you can quickly become addicted to the impressively high ROAS. This is a little bit, it's a bit of an insidious kind of psychological or mindset shift that happens, and it becomes very difficult to tolerate seeing anything less. So you end up reducing your budgets for the prospecting ads. And you'll probably be able to sustain this for a little while. Your existing customers will respond and buy from you again, but over time, it's going to take bigger offers and deeper discounts to keep them coming back. So I heard this analogy about squeezing the sponge. So if you think of your existing customer base as a sponge filled with water, if you squeeze this sponge, aka ask them to buy from you multiple times, water is obviously going to come out when you squeeze the sponge for a bit. But if you don't keep replenishing that sponge by adding new customers into the pool, then the sponge will dry up if you squeeze too many times. After a while, the combined effect of reduced margins from bigger discounts combined with the dwindling pool of new customers leads to stagnating growth. So the moral of this long story is, do you optimize for high ROAS or profitable customer lifetime value? By now, I hope you know the answer to that. And this is exactly why I refuse to promise a specific high ROAS result for the prospective client I mentioned at the start of the episode. It wasn't because I didn't think we could do it. So it's always possible, but I just didn't think it was a smart business move. And honestly, I really hope that they come back to us before they realize the impact of their choice and how it's going to hurt them. But for you, though, if you want to learn how to become the master of your metrics like this and get your hands on the kinds of strategies and planning tools that help you to, plan your marketing, plan your ad spend, track your results, and scale profitably, I would, of course, love to help you. If you're curious about what we could do for you, then I would recommend that you just start by booking in a free strategy session with one of our brand growth advisors. You can do that just by heading to productpreneurmarketing.com/let's-talk to book that in today. And we will, of course, include that link in the podcast show notes as well. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. A little bit different, I think, starting with my biscuit story, biscuit bribe, and ending with squeezing the sponge. Hopefully it's helped to bring home a little bit more of a complex mathematical conundrum that succeeding in e-commerce requires. Look forward to being with you on the show again next week, of course, and hope you have an amazing rest of the week. Bye for now.